everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have my January books that I all read. I know some of you have been writing me and asking me if I was going to do an updated, like, kind of monthly thing where I let you know what books I read each month. I am keeping track of everything in my Goodreads account, which I have now linked below in the description underneath this video. So if you guys want to join me on Goodreads to see what I'm reading on there and be friends, that way I can see what you guys are reading. That's always fun too. It's just like an app or even a desktop site. You can go to it and you can rate your books, you can keep track of your books, you can set goals, things like that. So you will find that listed below this video. So yes, if you're new to my channel, my name's Amanda. My channel is called Amanda Random. I'll briefly explain why, because we do a little bit of random everything and anything here, from hauls to books to anything you can literally think of. Let's get into all of the books that I read so far in January of 2022. Okay guys, so I'm going to start off. I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to try not to give any spoilers to these books. I'm just going to kind of give you a rundown of what books that I did read and hopefully the order that I read them. And then I'll let you know what my review was as far as were they a 5-star read, like that. So the way I basically kind of view my stars or the ratings that I give to books, for me it's pretty much that a 1-star was I did not enjoy it whatsoever. I didn't quit reading it, but yet I read it and I just didn't connect, 0 whatsoever. And a 2-star for me is basically it wasn't as horrible as a 1-star, but it really kind of just take it or leave it, I guess. There was really not much in it that I found enjoyable, but it definitely wasn't a 1-star. So for the 3 stars, it's a book that I basically put out there as it was okay. I liked the book. It was enjoyable at some parts, but I didn't have like a deep-rooted connection with that book either, but yet it was still good. So basically a 3-star, it was just okay. It was a decent read. And a 4-star for me is where there were some really, really memorable moments, books that, you know, I really liked the way that the author wrote them, and I got, you know, kind of intrigued by the characters and the plots and the things that are going on, so it kind of draws you in. And a 4-star for me is definitely a good read. My 5 stars are books for me that just, they're books that basically I absolutely loved, that I'm going to remember things from them and carry them with me like for the rest of my life. Whether it's quotes or characters from the book or relationships from the books or whatever it might be from that particular book that makes me really, really deeply connect with that book, that's how you get a 5-star. So now that we explained that, I promise we're going to get into the books. So the very first book that I read this year in January was The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. Wow. I guess I really wasn't expecting what I got out of this book. It's a smaller book. It was a very quick read. I think it was only like less than 200 pages. That was like around 194 pages or so. So the book actually kind of led me somewhere that I didn't expect it really to. All of those unanswered questions that you have in life, like the big ones, after you die, he basically goes to heaven and he meets 5 different people that help him realize why the things happened the way they did while he was alive. And wow is all I can say. Like, it's definitely a book that made me think. I got like invested in the characters, in his story, in his life, the life he led while he was alive, and the life he was finding out about in heaven. So for me, because this is something that I said, like, this book is going to stay with me, it really made me think about some of the things that I question and things like that. So this book got a 5-star read. So it was the first book of January, and it was also my first 5-star read of January, and it just did it for me. So that's what I have to say about this. The second book I read, this book basically I believe this one came from a free library, and this one is called What My Mother Doesn't Know by Sonia Sones, and I liked it because the cover is really pretty. I love the back, like there's all these little, I don't know, it's just really super cute. Underneath the dust jacket, it's a really pretty color. It's like this pink and almost like baby blue. I don't know if you can see the writing, but it's kind of like iridescent. If you can see, the back is also pink. So I really loved the cover underneath this book. So that was honestly like my biggest thing to wanting to pick this book up. For me, I don't know how to even sum it up. I guess it's more, this was obviously like a young adult book, and the book kind of tells you about this girl Sophie, and it tells you about her heart-stoppingly riveting story of her first love and also her second and her third. And it just talks about how she's basically going boy crazy, and she's trying to figure out what's the difference between love and lust, and she meets these different characters, and that's pretty much all I can really say without ruining the book. So if you see me looking down, it's because I have my notes right here. This book, even though it was a really fast, simple, easy read, the way it was written, I can show you on like the pages. Obviously, this is a book you can fly right through. I liked the book. It wasn't even quite okay. At some point, I was almost like, do I really want to even read this? And then I told myself, well, you know what? It's going to be a fast read, so just read it. So I did only give this book 2 stars because for me, I didn't really connect too much with the characters. Like, I don't know. I think it was just more geared towards younger girls. And even though I love reading young adult books and things like that, this one just didn't do it for me. So that was book number 2, and it only got 2 stars. The third book I ended up reading is another book that I found at a free library. And whenever I find books at free libraries, I always feel like I don't find them, like they find me, if that makes sense. And for anyone that doesn't know, a free library is basically like just the little... It almost looks like, I would explain it as an oversized mailbox with like a door, and you can open them up and they're in people's yards. Sometimes you can find them at like parks and churches and things like that. And you can go and you can check them all out, and you can bring a book that you're done with and take a book. So it's really cute because, like I said, then it's almost like you don't get to go there being like, oh, I want to find this book. You go there and just say, oh, this book's speaking to me, so that one's coming home with me. Therefore, I feel like they pick you and you don't pick them because you just never know what you're going to find there. And I really, really, really like that when I find different books. So my third book was found at a free library, like I said, and this is called The Girls by Emma Cline. So this book I also read very, very fast. This is what it looks like under the cover. It's got pretty writing on the side. It is just a dark blue and white, which still looks really pretty to me. I don't know why that's a thing for me, but I get overly excited about pretty covers, dust jackets. I get excited about what's under the dust cover or jacket. But yeah, it was a good book. I flew through it. I kind of got into the characters. The storyline was really good. It is basically talks about, I think it was in the 1960s, yeah. And it is about a girl who ends up, she kind of has like a weird lifestyle where her mom kind of just doesn't pay any attention to her, and she's kind of just looking for her place in the world, I guess. Her dad has moved away and he's got a new girlfriend, or, you know, soon to be wife, and she's kind of just floundering around the really quiet, good girl. She ends up meeting like a group of girls in the park, and she watches them, and she basically gets pulled into this cult. And I'm talking like full on, it's a cult. And she ends up like becoming a part of their cult, and there's all these terrible things that end up happening. And it talks about how people are made to believe like that this cult is just you want to be a part of it. You want to dedicate your life to it. You want to do everything you can to be a part of this cult and be with and or next to even the leader, who they obviously all worship as just their own god of gods. That's all I can really much say about it. She gets sucked into this cult. All these things happen. She learns a lot about who she is and self-discovery, and there are some trigger warnings in this book as far as sexual abuse. There's some murder. There's just different things like that. But I did end up giving this book right here, I believe, a 3-star, because like I said, it was an okay read. I liked it. It wasn't like 100% memorable, but it was fast to read. I liked the way it was written. It was really smooth and easy to read and get right through. So I did give book number 3 a 3 stars. So I ended up, I don't know how to explain it. So this is what I ended up doing. My 4th book that I read was a book that a family member, a close family friend, wrote themselves, and they wanted me to kind of read it and let them know what I thought, because they're going to be working with a publisher. And I don't want to bring up any names or anything like that, but technically my 4th book was a book that's called Will I Be. I'm not going to put the author's name because you're not going to find this book anywhere. Like I said, it hasn't been published yet. But I did get to read it. Words, there's not enough words. I was so pulled into this book, and the way she wrote, the words she used, it was just like, it was like you were reading poetry, but it was just the story. And you got this huge insight into her thoughts and the way it was to live when she was a child, and how hard life could be, and like I said, like self-discovery and learning that it's okay to be different, and there's different things about religion tied into it, and how she was from a strict religious family, and how she never felt good enough, and boys, and discovering sexuality, and like all the trials and tribulations of life were all pulled into this book. And 5 stars, like 5 stars. And it's not because I'm being biased, because I know the person that wrote it. I literally, it invoked emotion to the point where I had tears in my eyes. I was laughing out loud while reading the book. Like it grabbed me. It got me. That's all I can say about it. I feel bad for even like bringing it up because I can't share it with you guys yet, but that was technically my 4th book, and I didn't know how to count that like on my Goodreads account as a book, because I don't even know if you can like go in there and put a book in that doesn't exist yet. So what I did is I read this book. So this was Heather the Totality by Matthew Weiner, and this book was, I mean, it was okay. It was a little less than okay. It's pretty much about a family that has a daughter, and their very, very rich daughter ends up attracting the wrong kind of attention, but yet she's almost asking for it in a sense. And I hate to say it like that, because I'm not saying like, oh, she was prancing around in, you know, revealing clothes and she was asking for it. But what I meant was, like, she knew someone was watching her. She knew this person wasn't good, but yet she still decided she wanted to go out and actually make them see her. She wanted them to catch glimpses of her. She wanted to be kind of looked at by this other side of, I guess, the life, because the guy that was looking at her was just a man that seriously had a lot of problems, and this guy came from the opposite side of the tracks, no money, horrible upbringing. He has a lot of mental problems, and that's all I'm going to say about this book. But this book got a 2-star from me, so I did count this as my book number 4 on Goodreads, just because I wasn't able to put the book that I read on there. So Number 5 was When Jesus Was a Green-Eyed Brunette by Max Davis. This one I was like, yeah, probably not going to really get into it. Probably not going to really, I don't know. I'm like, the back sounded good, but yet sometimes I have to be in the mood for those kind of books. And I wasn't sure when I started if I was really going to be in the mood for a book like this. It ended up being 5 stars. That's pretty much all I can say. It just is a book that grabs you. It makes you think. It makes you evaluate your life. It makes you think about your trials and tribulations and how there's other people out there that have it worse, but yet can be such inspiring, amazing people in the face of their own fears and death and just different things like that. And it's basically talking about like the cards you get dealt. And this guy is explaining how he did not see himself becoming an author and writing books like this. When he was younger, he was doing things he shouldn't have been doing, not very godly things, and he kind of fell off that path only to be sucked back into it. And there's actual stories in here, like real live stories in here about people he interviewed for this book and why God basically wanted him to write this book. And the stories of like his research of some of the people that he met along the way in this book took my breath away. Like I teared up in some of the spots, and the way he explained certain situations where obviously this whole book has to do with religion, but the way he explains things lets you know that for me personally, I have a relationship with God. I am a Catholic. I also, though, don't attend church service on, every Sunday. For me to connect with God, they say you need to be in God's house. Well, God created everything. So sitting right here in this bedroom, I'm in God's house. If I want to go have a prayer session, I want to talk to God, I can do that down by the water. I can do that in the bathtub. I can do that sitting in my living room. I can do that on my porch. I can connect with him anywhere. And I don't think that you have to attend church services every Sunday in that sense to believe that you are religious or that you have that background. So this book explores a lot of that. It also explores some of the different amazing things that people have witnessed as far as dying and what they witnessed, why they were laying there dead and then literally were brought back to life because they chose it. And there's just so many stories in there. I am going to give a spoiler in this one because there's one story. There's actually a lot of different stories in particular in here that just grabbed me. I'm going to go back and actually probably annotate this book because it's something I want to remember those parts forever. And I want to be able to look back and be like, yep, this is why this book was a 5-star for me. I will say in the beginning, it was very slow when it starts talking about his life. And I kind of was like, I don't know, it's going to be okay, but is it going to really be decent? And then the more I got into it, it was like, oh, no, I'm hooked. This is, yeah. So one of the stories he talks about in here is when he ended up having a woman that saw what he was doing in his other books. And she contacted him and let him know that she found out that she had breast cancer and there's really nothing else at that point that they could do for her. And they told her she didn't have long to live. And she felt like she was just, she wanted to know if there's, could he pray for her? Could he do anything for her? And the backstory for this woman was she grew up without a father and she struggled her whole life wishing that she knew who her father was and that he was a part of her life, and how basically just every little girl wants that connection with their dad. And she kind of started doubting the fact that, her relationship with God, and it was just really sad the way she was explaining it. And she was basically asking for him to pray with her and to help her overcome this cancer and all these other things. And He did pray with her over the phone, and he was talking to her. Mind you, he's never met this woman. They were just talking on a phone call. And during the prayer, he was like, can you give me something that I can give to her to let her know that you are here and that you're with her? And, he didn't even really pray and ask for God to cure her cancer or anything like that. He was just asking for God to give him a sign or something to let her know that he was with her. And he started picturing this picture in his head of this little girl on the street in this little red dress, and she's dancing and she's holding her hands and looking up, and the person holding her and looking down at her is indeed God himself, and he's dancing with this little girl in a red dress. And he's like, I don't know what this means, but I have to tell you. And he starts explaining it, and he's like, do you see it? Can you picture it? And he was like, please, God, let her see what I'm seeing. I don't know what this is supposed to mean, but could you let her, use me to let her see this? And she was like, I see it. And all of a sudden he kind of stopped, and he was like, you see it? Like, is God channeling it into your brain? He was like, what? You're seeing this. You see it then? And she's like, no, I really see it. And he's like, explain to me. And she's like, no, I'm really literally looking at what you just described to me. It is a painting on my wall. And he kind of just froze and was like, and this woman came to tears, and she told him in the book or over the phone, it was a picture that her friend had found for her at a flea market. And it was this little girl dancing with God, and she saw it, and for whatever reason it drew her in, and she just knew she had to get this for her friend who was, having a hard go with life at that time and really questioning her relationship with God and whatnot, because she always just wanted a dad. She wanted that relationship. She wasn't given that, so she was kind of at odds. And for whatever reason, the friend, years and years and years before any of this had happened, saw this painting, and she's like, I need to get this for her. It was calling to her, so she got it, and she brought it to her, and she hung it up on her wall. And long story short, that was God's way of using this man to tell her that she has always had a father. Obviously, wasn't the kind of father she wanted, the biological father that was there for her, here on earth. But through this picture, it was just so magical. I wish I could explain it the way he wrote it. So I guess if you really want to get the gist of it, go pick up this book. Get through the first little part about his life and how he ended up to where he became the author, and then you're addicted. Like, the way he explains things, there's a part in here about bonsai trees and church. Holy mama, that reached in, grabbed my heart. It made me feel like the things I'm feeling are okay to feel when there's other people out there that definitely have tapped into God and things like that, and they believe some of the same things. So 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. This forever will be a book that I'm going to read again and again to remind myself of things that matter to me. So 5 stars for this book, and this was number 5 that got 5 stars. So number 6 was this book right here. It is Alaska Twilight by Colleen Cobble. This was a very easy book as well to read. I got really into the characters. The storyline was really good. It talks about this lady who she lived in Alaska prior in her youth with her family. There's some murder that happened, and her parents were murdered. She's back now in Alaska after not being there ever since she was very young. And she's a world-renowned photographer now, and she's working with a man that has a show. It would be on Wild Discovery or something for us, where he goes around the world and, he films bears and he interacts with tigers and just different crazy things like that. And she gets to come along as his photographer and videographer, basically. And all of this, it brings her back to a tragedy that happened in her life, not just with losing her parents, but a sister. And all these things start unfolding. So she goes back to this little Alaskan town. It's a good book. It kept me intrigued enough to make it through to the end. So I did give this book 3 stars, but it was a very hard decision because it was okay. Sometimes I thought it was a little better than okay, which would have given it 4 stars, but I did end up going with 3 because it was a good book. Would I reread it again? Probably not. And usually my 4-star books, I'd like to be able to look at them and be like, oh yeah, I would definitely pick this up and read it again sometime. I kind of got everything out of it that I wanted the first time I read it. So for me, it ended up being 3 stars. The next book I got was number 7. This one is called They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. Wow. Wow. That's what I have to say about this one. Wow. I didn't know if I was going to like it because in the beginning they start talking about how they basically live in a world. I'll read you this first part. It says, hello, I'm calling from Deathcast. I regret to inform you that sometime in the next 24 hours, you'll be meeting an untimely death. On behalf of everyone here at Deathcast, we are sorry to lose you. Live this day to the fullest, okay? So to sum things up in this world, something ends up happening. No one knows how they know, but there is a upper level of, I don't know if it's the government or society, but basically somehow or another, these people are alerted, Deathcast, who's going to die on what day. And when your day comes, they call you up on the cell phone that they give you, and they ring, ring, hello, this is Deathcast. You're dying today, sometime from when we hang up this phone to, a minute later till 24 hours later from now. But they let you know this is your last 24 hours to live. They don't tell you how you're going to die. There's no way to change it. People question how they know. They never tell you. So basically, it's a story about a younger man that finds out that Deathcast calls him and lets him know. He's a very reserved young man who doesn't really do much. He sits in his house. He reads his books. He plays Xbox. He lives inwardly more than he lives outwardly. Introvert, not an extrovert type deal. He is only I think 17 or 18, and he realizes after Deathcast calls him that what has he done with his life? He's missed out on any life by being scared and afraid to do things and afraid to look stupid. And he ends up meeting another boy who gets a call from Deathcast that basically leads the opposite life of him. He was an orphan. He was out there living life, doing things, getting in trouble. And long story short, they end up meeting up. And that's all I'm going to say about the book because I don't want to ruin it. But this book did end up drawing me in. I was kind of getting irritated about the Deathcast stuff because I was like, how do they know? I want to know how they know. I would want to know how they know. You're not going to call me up and tell me I'm dying in 24 hours without giving me any more information because I'm a freak. And then I started questioning, would I even want to know? If this was a real thing, would you want to know? Would you want someone to call you up and be like, ring, ring, yo, you're dying in 24 hours. Peace out. No, don't tell me. I don't want to know. No, that is the only answer I fully came to is, no, I would not want this. I would not want to answer my phone ever. No. But I did get sucked into the characters, and there is some, I guess it's male romance that happens even in this book. So it's just really cute. And I admit in the beginning I didn't want to like the book for some reason, but I really ended up liking the book. So this did get 4 stars, and this was my number 7. So number 8 for me, Before Women Had Wings by Connie Mae Fowler, is this book right here. So I'm sure you can see all the tabs, and that's because this is the first book ever that I annotated. I got my little rainbow bookcase here, or bookcase? What am I trying to say? I got my little rainbow little pen case thing here, and I ended up coming up with my own little kind of key that lets me know. It's like my book annotations tabs color key. So I have all these tabs here. Of course, some are falling off. And I color coordinated each tab to what my meaning was. And if you want to see how I do that, I can make a dedicated video more specifically to that. But I got all of my highlighters in here with my matching pens and things like that and my tabs. So I just decided that when you annotate a book, it's up to you too. Some people write in them, some people underline, some people just use Post-it notes to write their thoughts on. But for me, I wrote right in this book because I knew I was keeping this, so there's some parts that I underlined with different colored tabs. I wrote like my very first quote, or my very first, no, this would be my second tab in the book, but it says, wow, that's a pretty shocking start to this book, because let me tell you, wowzas, wow. Like, this story is about Bird Jackson and her family, and it was back in the day, so wow. Like I said, the first paragraph, trigger frickin' warning for anyone out there. It talks about suicide, child abuse, child neglect, domestic abuse, murder, holy wow, racism. Like, there is so much in this book. So much in this book. I don't really know how to explain it, but you can see from my tabs if those represent emotions or important parts, sad parts, angry parts. I went through the roller coaster of all them emotions while reading this here book, because it really gives you insight to so many different things and to the characters. On one page, you're hating this character. You can't believe that they're so evil. And then on the next page, it explains a little more about that same character, and then it makes you realize, like, wow, maybe they're that messed up because they went through some of those same things, and it just kind of, like, really gets your heart and mind and everything into this book. So all I can say without giving too much away is this was definitely a 5-star book for me, because it really made me think. It made me go through all those emotions. I got connected with the characters. And then, because originally I wanted to give it a 4-star review, because there were so many parts that I hated in this book. And it wasn't because I hated the way the author wrote the book, though. It was more that I hated having to see the anguish that some of these characters in this book had to go through. And I developed a very raw passion for disliking a couple of the people in this book and their actions. So at first I was like, no, it's only getting 4 stars, because there was just so many parts that made me angry, literally angry. There were a lot of quotes in here that were memorable, though. There were, so then I thought about it, and I'm like, it deserves 5 stars, because one, I'm never going to forget this book, because it's the first book I ever ASMR annotated. But I did go against the 4 and give it the 5, because, like I said, the author wrote it amazing. You take a lot out of the book, and definitely check this one out. So that was number 8. I read quite a bit of books in January, not gonna lie. So moving on to the 9th book of January. It was called The Lying Game. This book is by Ruth Ware. She's also the author of The Woman in Cabin 10, which is a book that I'm trying to get my hands on right now. I always do this. Like I said, I always got to check this out. And it's got the prettiest blue. How pretty is that? I like the cover too. This book, at first, I wasn't sure if I was going to get into it because problems. So now that we got that back on and taken care of, it is a bigger book. I mean, it's not like super big, and the writing's not bad at all. It's like 350 something pages. I ended up reading this one super quick again. So in this book right here, The Lying Game, it says the rules are simple. 1, tell a lie. 2, stick to your story. And 3, never, ever, ever get caught. So this is about a kind of mix of different girls that all end up going to a boarding school, basically. And one of the professors, like, kids get mixed in with some of the new girls, and they end up starting this game, and it's called the lying game, where they see how many lies they can tell people and that they can get them to believe, and it spirals out of control. There is murder. There is so many twists, like, in the plot to this book. As soon as you think you have it figured out, you're like, oh, I know what's going on. I know what's going down. And then you get like 2 more chapters in and you're like, nope, no, I don't. No, I don't. So then it really makes you think, keeps you intrigued. I really like the relationships. Did you just see me hit myself in my face? Right in the eye. I really do like the relationships that the girls have in this book. It was fun to get immersed into the world because they talk about when they were young and in school and everything that happened while they were there. And then on the flip side of that, they all come back together to talk about things that are happening because of their past. And they all come back together older after not seeing each other for years and years and years. Some have children now and things like that. Just, they all went their own ways, but they all come back together to basically figure out what's going on, and it gets really good. It does get really good. So I also flew through this book, and like I said, this was book number 9 for me, and I did give this 4 stars as well. So book number 10, dun, 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 dun. This was also a book that was at a free library, and I remember seeing it at, I think, Barnes & Noble. So I was like, I'm going to grab that one because that looks interesting to me. Looks like something I could fly through. So because it was called Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, I had a feeling I was going to get somewhat connected and have some emotions through this book. Let me tell you something, though. The emotions that I have, I don't even know if I told you the author. It's a novel by Jesse Andrews. The emotions I had in this book, I thought were going to be very traumatic, sad, annoyed, like, why is this happening type thing. Let me tell you, this book took cancer and it took the dying girl's perspective and the perspective of her friends that she makes while she's going through this horrible time in her life, having leukemia. And I thought I was just going to cry and cry my eyes out. And if you guys see all the color in there, what color is predominant? It's green. For me, green means I literally laughed out loud. It was funny. There were parts in this book, like, I felt bad for laughing because the author writes so freely in here about his experience of being the boy that befriends the dying girl. And instead of one of those books that, like, pull you in and make you feel so sorry for the person that's dying, makes you see, like, this whole love plot, and it brings you this great feeling of connection and life and death, and you learn something, and it doesn't do that. It tells you from this perspective, and they make light of a lot of things, but not in a cruel, mean-hearted way. It just is a very honest rendering of these kids' lives and how they react to their friend dying. So that's all I basically want to say. But for me, I could not stop laughing. I was literally in my living room reading this book, and I'm reading along, and all of a sudden I'm cracking up to the point where, like, my husband came in and he was like, "What is so funny? Like, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading." And he's like, "Must be a funny book." And I'm like, "You have no idea." There's just the way the kids talk, the way they formulate different thoughts. I'm just like, oh my God, I was that young once, and clearly I still am a child because I was laughing at things that a grown woman shouldn't be laughing at. But I've never ever alluded to the fact that I am technically an adult. We won't go there. I'm still a child, so I can laugh at this book. And there were plenty of parts that I did indeed laugh. So I did give this book 4 stars as well. I thought that I was going to give it maybe 5, but it wasn't the 5-star quite for me. But I really, really did enjoy reading this book. And it actually really made me laugh. And even though it was sad and tragic, it really just put it out there for you in a different way to see the viewpoints of different people along the way of life and death, I guess. So that was that book. This is taking forever. I'm so sorry. Hopefully y'all have put me in like 5 times speed and I sound like the chipmunks and it's not taking me forever to do this for you guys. The next book that I read was a book that I recently purchased because one of the other things I wanted to do this year was I have never really read a graphic novel. I have also never read manga. So 2 of the things that I made myself go and do was buy a manga and a graphic novel. So I ended up going and just not knowing anything about any of these books. And I found this one, A Girl in the Himalayas, David Vignali. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm horrible at pronouncing names for authors and illustrators and such. But I read this part on the back and I was like, well, I'm hooked. I will get this one. I will give it a try. So it says, A Girl in the Himalayas is a wonderful fable about learning the value of this incredibly magic world we live in, which we can so easily forget, and how sometimes we must protect this world from the dangerous illusions we create and come to believe. So that drew me in right there. And a graphic novel is all pictures. And this one is more black and white, has like a little bit of that tan color in it, brown, I don't know what you want to call it. But it was really cute. Basically about another realm of world that they kind of built out in the Himalayas. And this man finds this young girl who lost her family. And he basically risks his immortality to save this human girl and bring her back to their world, which then makes him lose his immortality because he brought a human there, and we know that that's just going to create more humans to come looking for her, and this magical world that they live in is going to turn to be cold and dead, and, you know, which a lot of humans do out there. We take what we want and don't worry about the consequences of what happens to our world and basically our footprints that we leave behind on it. So I got really into the book. I will say, for a graphic novel, my first graphic novel, it was really cute. The characters were cute. The drawings were really cute to me. But for me, I just kind of felt like this was the vegetables, but I didn't get the meat and potatoes. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe that's like, you know, Wisconsin country girl way of putting it, but I liked the story. I liked the storyline. I just wish there was more to it. I wish it explained it a little more. I wish it went a little more in depth about things, but I don't know. That's where I question, being that it was my first graphic novel. Like, are all graphic novels like this? Do they kind of leave you wanting more of the meat and potatoes and you just get the veggies? And I like veggies, so it's not a bad thing, but that's just kind of my thoughts on this book. So I did give it a 3 stars. But I'm definitely looking into reading some more graphic novels and seeing if that is something that I keep feeling about them or not. So this was book number 12. Oh, good Lord. We're almost done. This was book 13. This is Ruby and Olivia by Rachel Hawkins. This was a really cute book, but it was a book that kind of just, I don't know. It was okay. And because it was okay, it got 3 stars. It's a book about twins. One twin is kind of trying to find her own way in life and doesn't want to be labeled as the, you know, identical twins anymore. So she goes away. Her other twin ends up going somewhere else. I don't want to ruin the book. So she ends up meeting one of her her twin that's gone to camp. She ends up meeting one of her friends that she had when she was younger that she really did not like herself. And they meet up at this, I'm going to also call it a camp without spoiling the book. And they have to go into this huge mansion that's in their town. And the old man that lived there for ever and ever, his whole family did, ended up passing away. And he left the house to the city. So basically, this group of kids go into the house to kind of categorize things and get the house ready for them to turn it into whatever it might be that they want to use this house for. And it ends up being a ghost story. So we get a little paranormal ghosts in here. It was cute. It's a young adult book. So maybe that's kind of why I wasn't as into it. The ending was kind of a shocker. Kind of got me. I wasn't expecting the ending to this book. And I wish that the ending was the start of the book, if that makes sense. Because once they got to the very ending and they started explaining things, I was like, man, they could go so many places with this now that these girls figured out this and whatnot. And then it got really interesting and then it ended. So that was this book. This was my last book of January, book number 13. So that is it for my January reads of 2020. Thank you guys so much. I did end up having, like two 5-star reads this month. I'm going to make another video for you guys of my TBRs for February. And then I want to hurry up and get all these posted. And this is going to be something new I'm doing on my channel. I'm going to tag all of these as reading vlogs or things like that so that you know. I do a lot of random things, and now this is something that I really am passionate about. My books, I'm constantly reading. I'm creating a library upstairs in one of my rooms that we don't use, and I'm really excited about like vlogging, reading vlogs, and building my library upstairs, literally building it. I have still shelves that need to be put together. I want to decorate the walls, maybe get a super huge beanbag, get some cool aesthetics and just, you know, some lights. I'm not even sure, but I want to take you guys along on that journey with me. So before I make this 2 hours long, I'm going to stop talking and let me know in the comments below if any of these books sounds interesting to you, or if you've read the books, let me know what you guys thought. And again, you can check out all of my information that will be listed below this video. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope I didn't sound too ridiculous. I'm not always good at articulating my words and thoughts, but hopefully I got them across and you guys found something maybe new that you're into either watching or finding and reading yourself. So with that being said, if you haven't already, join a random family. We're going to do all kinds of random goodness. So as always, stay random, you guys. Bye. I'm going to go read.